Excellent. So, hi, Nicki. Thanks for joining us today. So, hi, everyone. Dan Farthing here from Riverview Portfolio. Really pleased to be joined again by Nicki Kinton from Confident Cashflow. For those of you who have seen it, Nicki did do a webinar with us. I think it was last year, Nicki, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Into some detail around payment things and stuff. And we thought it was very relevant to get another one in place, really, with everything that's sort of going on in the world at the moment and what we hear in the news and stuff with regards to, we'll refer to it as the R word. You can call it what you want. But again, the importance of getting things in place to make sure that you get paid for the hard work that you're doing, really, is really the key topic around this. So what I'd like to do is, I'm going to hand over to Nicki, really, just to start with. Nicki, if you want to just give us a bit of an intro on you and so on, just to remind everybody, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you. So, I'm Nicki Kinton. My business is Confident Cashflow, and I work with businesses to help them to get paid on time. And I start from the premise that late payment is a symptom, not the problem, which sounds a bit counterintuitive, but late payment actually is a symptom that we've not done something, not communicated something, or in the lead up to us wanting to get paid. So that could be anything from, not having that initial conversation to work out if they can pay within your terms, through to not having the right T's and C's in place and all of that type of stuff. So,
cool. So what we'd like to do then, I know Nicki's got a bit of a presentation put together, which what we're going to do around it is just really discuss the topics that sort of come up. So we're going to lean on Nicki's expertise here. Obviously, if there are questions that come up, for you guys that are watching this live, there is the chat box. Do please put it in there, and I'll be keeping an eye on that, and we'll see if we can answer things that come up. Likewise, if you've got, like I said, other things that you want to input into it, then again, please feed that back to us, because it'd be really, really good so that we can expand on it, so make the most of having Nicki here today. But also, like, if there are other topics that come out of it that maybe then lead into another webinar, then we'll be pleased to sort of take that on board. And I know Nicki would be pleased to sort of discuss those things as well. So yes, Nicki, if you can bring your presentation up, if you're able to sort of share that, just to get us started.
Right. So obviously, just you've done all the intros anyway, so
yeah.
It's always nice to have a fancy slide with your face on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, just in case we forget.
So I thought we'd start off by talking about where things are going. And there's a lot of, obviously it's a hot topic in the media at the moment. So but the UK already has quite an appalling culture, actually, of late payments. And we've already got double figure inflation. It's expected to be go up to about 13%. And the Bank of England is predicting that by Q4 this year we will be in a recession. And they believe that actually they won't get inflation down back to its target of 2% till about the end of 2024. So we've got a little period of time to try and live with this and work through it. There's also some interesting facts coming out about bounce back loans and C-bills as well, which basically is showing that businesses are already starting to feel a certain element of distress around the current circumstances.
I think that the bounce back loan and the C-bills is really, really relevant, I think, at the moment, because of what we've also started to see is a slightly different attitude from the banks in regards to non-payment of bounce back loans. So I think the bounce back loan in particular was quite an interesting one, wasn't it? Because there's no personal guarantee.
No.
It was incredibly easy, and I have said it to a lot of people. I think it was too easy for businesses to potentially get their hands on up to 50k. They were coming through same day after sort of like a 10-minute application. Let's say we've started to see some pressure put back on the banks in terms of what their criteria, their monitoring, I guess, really it was, in terms of people applying for it. Which we're now starting to see reflected then in the difference of attitude about then how that gets paid.
Yeah.
So that I think is incredibly relevant again, especially as people may have taken those extended periods, because there was obviously some extended repayment periods, wasn't there, that was available on the bounce back loans as well.
Yes, so you could have you delayed your payments, or you can spread it over 10 years instead of the 5. So there's different options that you can do. You can take a 6-month break. There's a lot of things that you were able to do. So but for a lot of people, taking those loans out during the pandemic was actually just putting a sticking plaster on what was an already existing problem.
Yep.
So it just pushed the can down the road a little bit. So
again, people had different attitudes, didn't they, in terms of why they took the bounce back loan. I think it's fair to say, I think we've seen quite a mix really in terms of then how that looks from a perspective of did people take it with the intention of needing it, i.e. cash flow?
Yeah.
Did people take it with the intention of investing? Did people take it with the intention that they were never going to use it? And we're in a position, we've seen it with clients that some have already paid back some or all of the bounce back loan because they sort of see that they've come the other side of something.
Yeah.
But then everybody's always going to get the pressure from the bad few that did it incorrectly as well. So I think that's where the pressure comes from a HMRC perspective, as well as cash flow and business and so on, is that you get brought under a spotlight even if you weren't the person that did it wrong.
Yeah, that's right. So and actually I think about the last figure I saw was around about 8% of bounce back loans have been repaid in full.
Okay.
So that's not a bad statistic really. And that's all the people that took the bounce back loan, stuck it in an account somewhere, and it was a just in case fund.
Yeah.
And so, as you say, they've come out the other side of it, realized that they don't need it, they don't want to be paying the interest, so they've paid it back before in full. But
what are the interesting points on there, Nicki, in terms of, you mentioned about UK already having a culture of late payment?
Mm-hmm.
So do you see, again, from your experience, businesses that you've dealt with, is that across the board in terms of size of business? Because one of the things, again, we sort of see a little bit, especially as people are sort of growing and expanding businesses, where they start to maybe interact with bigger businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And then they feel dictated to by the bigger business about what payment terms look like and retentions and so on. Is that a thing that's fed down from the top, or do you feel across all aspects?
So first of all, we need to define what a bigger business is. By law, a bigger business is actually quite substantial in size and only accounts for about 8,000 or 7,600 or something like that businesses in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
But to most of us, a bigger business is just somebody that's bigger than we are.
Yeah.
Of that, so 5.6 million businesses in the UK, and 98% of them are classed as small businesses.
Yeah.
I think it's just that the thing that there's an expectation gap in many cases. Now, there are some genuine late payments in there, and quite a few where there is a deliberate policy, say on behalf of a business, to only pay on the final demand. And I have seen that seen that in practice, where that is the policy of the business. But more often than not, as a business grows, it has to have, a payment has more touch points. So it becomes less of the business owner sitting down with their mobile phone banking app and going click, 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 or and making a payment, and becomes a lot more about a process it has to go through. So the person that agreed to buy from you is not necessarily the person that's going to make the payment.
Yeah.
And so what we find is a communication gap. So the person who's buying from you needs what you're selling. So they're going to say yes. They're going to say yes to your terms or anything like that. But actually, what will happen then is it'll go through their process, and it becomes obvious when you get to the end of it that actually their process means that their term, what they think they can pay under, is very different to what you want. Mm-hmm. And so there is always a big communication gap when you've got a bigger business and it's got to go through different hands, so it's got to go through an approval process and things like that, obviously that's going to take a little bit more time. What I do find is that the bigger businesses with these processes build in too much time, and it gets stalled because it gets stuck on somebody's desk. The person who's meant to approve the invoice and send it to finance or whatever, it gets stuck on their desk for 2 weeks, and then it just gets longer and longer and longer, and that's part of the problem. And also a lot of these businesses, they then have fixed payment term dates. So if your terms are 14 days from date of invoice and you send your invoice on the 1st of the month, but they only ever make a payment on month end. They have one payment run a month and on month end, and they're doing that to cut down on their admin.
Yeah.
You're never going to get paid on time. So you're going to report that as late payment every time.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some terrible late payments where people have owed money, 4-6 months in arrears, and that's horrendous and that's awful. And that is definitely feeds down from the bigger a business gets, the worse that gets.
Yeah.
Because there's so much red tape around getting paid. Often it's that queries are not being answered quickly. There's somebody's on holiday, something's happened, and I know firms are still using COVID as an excuse at this, because and actually this whole work from home thing is becoming a bit of a barrier to getting paid as well, because you can't speak directly to an accounts payable person to get your money. You have to leave a message with somebody else who will then or communicate by email, because whilst some of these businesses have got work from home, is they won't give out the mobile numbers of the people that are working from home. And I can see some of that is an attempt to protect them and stop them getting overwhelmed with stuff. But actually, if you're going to have a work from home operation, you've got to make sure it's fully functional.
You get VoIP or something, don't you?
Yes, that's it.
It then becomes a system thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Excellent.
So there is there's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other, I think, in it. So there's where I always come from is as a business we can be doing so much more to make sure we understand any barriers to getting paid on time, and we can adjust our thinking to and processes, or even our acceptance criteria and what we agree to do based on that. And then you've got the flip side, where there are deliberate and some not deliberate as well, but just because of shocking admin.
I think it can be it can be very easy to rush into a sale, can't it? I know it's something that we've spoken about before, and I've heard you speak before at events and stuff with regards to it, where you want you think you want that pound coin effectively to come through, and then don't think about the steps about how much it's going to cost you to get that pound coin to actually hit your bank account.
Yes, absolutely. It's one of the biggest. So the biggest gaps I always find is that those pre-contract conversations. You'll have lots of questions about what they want to buy, what maybe even why they want to buy it, what they're going to use it for, how they want it delivered, all of those sorts of things. But you don't actually talk about how you're going to pay for it. You just assume they're going to pay for it. When you want them to.
We're good trusting people, aren't we?
Well, we are by nature, yes. And we always think that people will behave in the same way that we would. Actually, and there will be genuine reasons that people can't pay you, so they will have those cash flow problems. And then it all becomes about communication. So how would you manage if you just found that you couldn't pay an invoice that you'd received because something else came up that sucked all your money out of your bank account or something like that. So you need to make sure that you've got that sort of communication piece going through all the time.
Cool.
Right. So I think one of the things to remember is that a recession is a natural part of the business and economic life cycle. So it's not something to be scared of. It's not something that's going to that's a disaster. I think you can if you go into the recession with a positive attitude, actually you can come through it okay. And actually some businesses will continue to grow during recession. It's, a lot of it depends on how prepared they are and what sort of mindset they have.
Yeah, it's positioning, isn't it? A lot of the time, when it comes to these sort of things, obviously this interacts with lots of other different parts of your business process around, obviously getting paid and stuff as well. But yeah, having that in place to, I refer to it as use COVID as the example. I've always encouraged people as part of their planning to have the rainy day fund.
Yes.
So some businesses, COVID would have, a storm fund wasn't enough to be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
But it would have put them in a better position to be able to take options, react, and so on. And again, obviously part of this is building those systems to allow you to flex and be robust, isn't it, as well, in terms of that ongoing business and how that sort of looks pre, during, and post, isn't it, in terms of around that as well.
Yeah, I mean, so a mutual acquaintance of ours talks about the winners, the watchers, and the whiners.
Yeah.
And the winners are those ones that are prepared, that see it as potentially as an opportunity to review what they're currently doing, and who take positive action.
Yeah.
So that's the key to surviving it, both from a business perspective, but also a mental health perspective as well, because it can be tough, and even preparing and making sure you're prepared for it requires a bit of engagement and effort. But it's absolutely doable.
Yeah. And it is different, let's be fair, and it's conversation that there are lots of people that business is difficult, isn't it? You take some punches that you don't feel that you deserve at times, things like recession, COVID, stuff like that. And then, and it's, there is, it has a natural wear on people, I think, like to do it. But it's that support and that network and stuff around you that sort of gets you through that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think from a business owner perspective as well, the more that you can share your experiences, as you say, the easier it gets. So using things like your clients could use you and your expertise, and you will be learning from all your other clients, and you can bring lots to the party. So use your trusted advisors, use your networks, to work on their experience. It's that sort of, so
there's always stuff you can learn, isn't there?
Absolutely right. Yes. So the first bit then for me is the mindset, because you can't do anything else without having the right mindset. So I suppose step one is to acknowledge where you currently are. So that's taking stock of, do you have that rainy day fund? And this is things like looking at your cash flow forecasting as well. So actually, what does the next 3-6 months look like for us? And being positive about it, even if it doesn't look so great. And I know that's really difficult to do, but actually say, right, that's our starting point. That's our input, incentive to do stuff. So
I think part of this, and this is one of the, again, stuff I work a lot with clients, is being realistic about the time scale of how you can fix things. So like some things, they are quick wins to have, and they're really nice to get off a to-do list or whatever, and it feels really great. Other things, actually, the right answer might be that it takes 6 months to do it properly. And don't disappoint yourself by trying to set the 3-month expectation that you're never going to achieve with it. And be realistic that those are the steps you need to go through to get to that point. So you build the plan to the realistic time scale. Because I find, especially when there's problems, everybody's default reaction is to try and deal with it as quickly as possible, which in lots of ways is correct, but doesn't always bring you the right answer, or more importantly, sometimes a sustainable answer to it as well. Because it's the sticking plaster analogy, isn't it, in terms of, right, well, let's fix that problem, but it's not so great if you've got a broken arm. A plaster isn't going to fix that for too long, in terms of what's that.
That's right. So we enter firefighter mode. And so you know, and we really do, whilst we need to put out the most, you know, the most damaging fires, we do need to be looking at that fire prevention piece as well. So actually the second point is, you know, you might see everybody else looking really, you know, switched on and focused and everything like that, and you might feel that you're not doing as well as them, and that's a killer. Comparisonitis is a killer.
Comparisonitis, I haven't heard it called that.
but it is an absolute killer. I mean, so social media is awful for that. You know, you'll see everybody, you know,
you put your best bits on social media, don't you?
Absolutely, all these success stories, but actually, you know, and that can really make you start to feel that you're not getting anywhere, and that you're not, you know, what are you doing wrong? What are you, but actually they're struggling with the same things that you're struggling with. They're just not sharing about it. And I think you really do need to remember that this is your journey, your business. It's got nothing to do with how well or not somebody else is doing. You know, you've got to be focused on what you can do to drive your business forward.
I completely agree.
And there will be some, and so the point 3 is focus on those strengths. So you will have some good starting points. So you will have stuff already in place that you can build on, and you will have strength. So maybe your strength is customer service, or maybe your strength is delivery into a certain sector. You've got that to build on, so you can take elements of that. So why are we good at this? How can we make that throughout the rest of the business to make sure that we keep ourselves covered? So if you're really good at delivering a project to a timeline, actually you can apply that to make a project of your own business. And create that timeline of the things that you need to improve and do. So you've got skills in throughout your business that you utilize for certain aspects of it, and you can draw on those skills to help you with the rest of with the rest of the business, the working on the business piece, I suppose.
And I think it's important as well, isn't it, that element is also, again, both of us deal, with small, medium-sized businesses primarily in terms of like our client bases. It's important to know that you're not an expert at everything.
No.
Business owner mentality is often give it to me and I'll do it. Which isn't, it's rarely the best answer.
No, that's very true. And I think part of what, when we look at the being prepared, so part of that is actually working out what strengths, and what skill sets you need, and what processes and things you need to drive that forward. So, and the fourth point I put on here is take action, which it goes back to the winners, the watchers, and the whiners. So you need to be in that winners category. You need to do something. If you sit back and wait for recession to be over, or if you go the other way and actually all you do is complain about it, then you're not doing yourself any favors, and you're certainly not setting your business up to thrive during that time. So sitting around and wait, even if taking action, the first step is always the hardest. So even if that first action is just to have a conversation with somebody, take that first step. Or could be even as simple as read the first chapter of that business book you've been meaning to read all this time. Or listen to that podcast that you think is relevant to your industry or section. Listen to the first episode. Take that first step. And your first step might be just to, I don't know, have a read through your terms and conditions. When was the last time you read them? Do they make sense? For where you are now. It's just taking that first step. You don't have to imagine that you've got this huge great beast to try and tackle and wrestle with. Take one step at a time. I think whose book is it, the one thing? I don't know. But it really does say focus on the one thing that's going to get you to where you need to go. What's that first step that you need to do to get to where you need to go? And then the final bit is be accountable. So you've got to own this. You've got to own the process. You've got to own the fact that your business is working its way through some challenging times, both economically and probably mentally as well, because for all of us, it's not just our businesses that are being impacted by all of this. Our personal finances are, our our households, our families are all being affected by what's currently going on. So it's about just making sure, excuse me, you remain accountable for what for the actions that you can take.
But then that's also a case, isn't it, of actually trying to plan out, going back a few steps, is then also trying to plan out what it is you're trying to achieve by doing something, isn't it?
Yes.
So, am I being successful at this? Am I moving towards where I want to get with it, but knowing where the end point might be?
Yeah.
We all know, anybody that's been in business, that things are rarely a straight line, are they? Like in terms of getting somewhere. So, but at least if you know where you're trying to head, you can meander your way to it. But yeah, I think that's the key thing, isn't it, around that accountability, is again, it's that realistic expectations of the target, knowing what you want to achieve from taking action and acknowledging a situation and so on. And then sometimes those the stepping stones that get you there, isn't it, as well, I think.
Yeah, I'm absolutely right. You wouldn't get in a car with no destination in mind. If nothing else, you'd say, I want to do a circular route so I get back home again.
Yeah.
Even if you were just going to carry on, you'd set yourself a time limit or something. So you would put constraints on what you're going to do, and you'd have a goal.
Yeah.
And the same has to be for anything we do here.
Yeah.
So all being able to thrive during a recession is all about being prepared. And this is about, we're primarily concerned, obviously, in our conversation, with getting paid. And most of the things that we can do about getting paid to help ourselves get paid is all about having information and having good conversations and keeping on top of things. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I would advocate is reviewing and updating your terms and conditions. Make sure that they are fit for purpose. Make sure they reflect where you want to be. You might want to make some changes based on what's happening in the economy at the moment. So you might decide actually you want to start taking a bigger deposit or upfront payment, or you might decide that actually you're going to stop credit terms, or you're going to reduce credit terms. Particularly if your suppliers are doing the same to you, you need to make sure that you don't have a big cash gap between you having to pay suppliers and your clients paying you. And then the next thing I would always suggest is segmenting your customers. And this is so that you can be very tailored in how you treat each segment. And the segments really are about, they can be absolutely anything, but they can range from, customers that have a high credit score, or a low credit score, sorry. So they are high risk already. Mm-hmm. They could be customers that regularly pay you late. So you could segment them, late payers versus good payers, so that you can prioritize, working with those that are late payers, because if they're already paying you late, actually there's every chance that as things progress that will get worse. Yeah. You might segment them by the how much business they have with you. So if they are your top 20 clients, and if they account for a sizable proportion of your income, you might want to have a particular process for keeping an eye on them. Because if you lost one of those, how would your business cope with that loss of turnover? Mm-hmm. So that that would be another segment. There are also things like how long they've been a customer of yours and what they mean to your business. So that could impact on the level, how far you're prepared to go in your collections effort, And also, if they come to you with a temporary cash flow problem, you might treat those differently to other customers who you might immediately suspend services for other customers, but these guys you would potentially want to support. Obviously you need to make sure that that's not going to have a big negative impact on you, but you might want to support them through that because they've supported you in the past, or they've been a loyal customer for a long time. And so you might want to, say, have a process for treating those customers slightly differently.
Yeah.
So for each of those segments, you would have a credit control process that helps you to prioritize, that helps you to monitor them and keep an eye on them. The important thing is to be consistent in that. So if all of the customers in a particular segment go through the same process, in a normal world, things shouldn't slip through the net. You should be able to get the same level of commitment and information and all the things that you need from those customers.
I think the main thing I always say from that, because it came up in a conversation about a different topic I had with somebody last week, where you've got a standard that you work to in terms of maybe a company standard around a certain policy, and then, like you said, you measure people against that effectively, and then then there might be a different rule for the category 1 clients or the category 2 or whatever.
Yeah.
So I also think it's important to involve the right people at the right step as well. So I think that's the bit that sometimes gets a little bit lost, especially with credit control type things, is often it could hit the wrong person too late.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a real issue in terms of maybe bad debt, or the payment is incredibly late, it's cause big cash flow implications or whatever. There needs to be the flags early enough in that step to go that if this occurs, it's Nicki that deals with it, or it's Dan that deals with that step, and so on, in terms of trying to manage that to the best solution. Obviously, the best solution is getting paid, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely right. But how you manage the late payment and the escalation, and that's escalation within your organization and within your client's organization, and understanding how that, who that should be to. Some people go in far too early. Yeah. And they and so actually what happens then is, the FD there, or your FD or whoever, sort of, it becomes a non-event for them, because it just happens. You go in too early and it happens too regularly, because of their other commitments and things, that they need to get involved when it's a real issue, but they need to be made aware probably before they get involved. Yeah. So there's the first piece is creating awareness and reporting on it, and then you get to a point where say, right, okay, we have exhausted this is now your turn to get involved. This is this is the next step in our evolution of credit control. And it's the consistency is the key. Consistency gets results. If you only do 3 steps with and then stop, you're not sending a good message to your customer, and you will miss out on vital information that will help you to determine when that cash is going to come in. So
again, it's that thing about habits, isn't it? So there's a bit, we talked about, you mentioned a book earlier. I know there's another one I've read that's called Atomic Habits. James Clear. And with that is actually like, if you don't follow through on those steps that you should follow through on, you teach your customer that that's fine, that you won't follow through on the steps. Which therefore makes them, again, if it's linked to payment, which goes, well, that's fine. They won't send the letter that's going to take you to court, or they won't send the statement, or they won't send the method of payment, or whatever it might be. So why should they bother? Doesn't it? It creates that habit if you're not careful.
Absolutely. If you appear, and I will say appear because the reality might be different, but if you appear to not be too fussed about payment on time, because you're not making a fuss about it, then they're not going to be fussed about paying you on time.
Yeah.
And you are going to build that into the relationship. So we talked about being alert. So part of the reason for having all of these processes is so that you can spot changes quickly. It's about spotting changes in customer behavior. So, you know, if somebody is, and this is where your customer segments come in. So if you've got a customer who's in these customers always pay on time segment, and they suddenly start paying late, that should be a trigger for an immediate conversation, not just oh, they started paying late and leave it to that. So there's the be alert and be responsive, and you know, they go hand in hand. You first of all need to notice that they've suddenly started paying late, and you need to be responsive enough to have a question to ask them, is everything all right? What's going, you know, was there a reason? Is it a one-off? Is this something that, you know, so that you, and then potentially move them into a different segment so that they can go through a slightly more robust or more involved process, so you keep a closer watch on them. And it, you know, this happens with, I see it a lot with customers on DD, where people have got customers on DD. Well, they're on DD, so I don't need to worry about them. But actually you do, because if that DD fails for any reason, then you need to know about it. And what sometimes happens is you'll have people have the DD set up to automatically retry again in 3 days. And because it comes in on the second retry, they don't really, it doesn't really register that it failed the first time. But actually it's still important to understand why it failed the first time, because that could be, you know, an indicator that next time it will fail both first and second time, and then you'll have a debt problem. So it's, you know, again, about having a process that keeps a weather eye on these things, and you use data to drive your decision making and to drive any process reviews and improvements. And I think very often businesses don't collect enough data about payment and about the things that their clients are doing, and they don't collect enough data, and then they don't do anything with the data they've got. They don't use it to drive improvements, and that's where you can, you know, you can get so much more.
But I think that with data as a whole, I think that's the bit that there's potential for the improvement, because I know there's a risk, isn't there, that sometimes when you've got information all over the place, it takes ages to get it together, and by the time you've got it together, it's out of date. Because of, you know, time's passed, or the situation's changed, or your attention's gone on something else. Get business owner mentality of your brain sort of jumps around a lot between lots of different topics and things. So again, it's often thinking about that, what that process looks like, isn't it? What do I want to achieve from this? And therefore try to build the process to go to feed in the information and stuff around it, isn't it? Like it's something that, again, I speak a lot with people about, is going, well, you might be, you know, this size today or this type of business, but if you want to be a different type of business in 2 years' time or 5 years' time, like, what steps you need to do now to get you to that point? Because it might become a lot harder if you're then at 5 years' time and go, oh, my payment process system is completely shot. And to do that with potentially more customers, higher value, less time, you know, or, you know, resources that aren't there at the moment, all those sorts of bits and pieces can become a challenge, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely can. And actually, you know, some of this work you can do before you've even started doing business with the client. So it's about the questions that we asked beforehand, and going back to, you know, what I was talking about, about the definition of late payment. You know, the late payment, you know, can be subjective if you've not had that conversation in the first place. But there are more questions you should be asking now, now that we're heading, you know, into a sort of some sort of choppy economic waters, as it were. And just things, you know, simple questions like, so somebody comes to you, if you know they've been using a competitor, you can ask them why they're coming to you. Now, there's possibly 3 reasons. One is they're looking for a better price. Another could be that they are, you know, creating a bit of a backup. So should their main supplier, not be able to provide at some point because it's a mission critical supply. They're looking for additional suppliers that could support them in delivery. Or it could be that actually they've maxed out their credit line with their main supplier. They're not paying them on time, so they've been put on stop, and so they need to get it from somewhere else. So asking that question is really important, because you're going to get more of that latter group as we head deeper and deeper into this, this sort of economic turbulence. So I can't stress how important that communication piece is right at the very beginning, but also throughout. So this is an ideal opportunity for you to check in regularly with your customers as well, even if there's no payment issues at all. Just how are you doing? How are things going? Can we help with anything? It's just because actually that type of customer sort of relationship and service will breed loyalty. So
I will say again, I see it with clients all the time that them taking that action actually brings opportunity as well. So it's not loyalty, it breeds the opportunity that comes out, because there will be people out there that you say aren't affected, or different mindsets of things and so on, that they then might want an additional service from you because you've spoken to them and they didn't realize, or that you touch base, or you've hit them at the right time in terms of then the support and stuff that they need. So again, that communication thing has such a ripple effect across other aspects as well, isn't it?
It really does, yeah. If they are particularly big clients, I always advocate having a proper face-to-face meeting with them, even if it's just twice a year, or maybe up that to once a quarter, just to check in on where their business is going and how your business can support them in their goals and all of that. If they're obviously you can't do that with every client, because that would be just such a huge drain on your time. But actually for those key clients, those top 10 in your turnover, that sort of thing, if they're regular, when you've got people who are regularly buying from you, they absolutely have those conversations. If you've not got one of those, if the type of business that you have is not one of those relationships where you're already talking on a regular basis, then I think that's so important to do that and make sure that all of the right people are involved in those conversations. So you've got your buyer involved, but get finance involved as well, and so you can talk about any changes that are happening in their business, and does that mean there's any changes needed to the process, and you can tell them about what's going on in your business. I used to do this all the time when I was working in sort of the insurance sector. We would have regular quarterly meetings with the biggest of the insurers that we dealt with when I was working for a broker, because actually it's such a symbiotic relationship. You need to make sure that everybody is aware of how any changes might affect that that relationship. And with everything that's going on in the world at the moment, you just never know where you might be able to help and support.
And sometimes that falls outside of what you think as well, isn't it?
Well, it could be. I mean, it could. So you and I are both part of a networking organization. And it could well be that actually just having that conversation, and they say, actually, we've lost our, I don't know, we've lost our supplier of office stationery, and everything we've coming across is really expensive. You might have somebody you could recommend to them. It's not just about what you do as a business, but it's about how you support your clients more broadly. If you are building that relationship and and if they do start to struggle with money, those people that have been supporting them will be top of the pile to get paid. So selfishly, you can do it to make sure that you stay top of that pile. So I mean, I could sit here and talk for ages about all of the different things that a business could do, but a lot of it is very dependent on the business itself. So, I mean, I did just mention beforehand about new customers coming to you about wanting to try and find a second supplier for key supplies.
Yeah.
I would recommend that every business tries to do that, because cash flow is not gonna happen if you can't supply.
Yeah.
If you can't supply, you can't invoice, you can't get paid. So it's as simple as that. So suppliers are an important part of that process. So and again, having regular conversations with your suppliers, you need to make sure they're going to still be there and have been in existence, so that you can continue to service your clients.
Yeah. Excellent. So there's some really useful inputs there. And again, going back to the previous slide, is actionable inputs that we can all be doing, isn't there, as a business?
Yeah, most definitely. So, all right.
Cool. Cheers for that, Nicki. And I know, Nicki, I know what your next slide is. So do you want to flick onto that in terms of what you're offering to people that have obviously signed up for this, and we'll see the video?
Yeah, that's okay. So I offer a 1 hour power hour, which is basically, we'll go through, we can talk about your business specifically, and look at what you're currently doing now and the sort of things that you could tweak, the little actions that you could take. It doesn't have to be complicated, it doesn't have to be time consuming, but there will be some little wins that you can, and actions that you can take now to give you more clarity on, payments in the future. And I'm offering that to people who've signed up for this at a sort of a bonus price. So you get £25 off the normal price.
Yeah, I really appreciate you offering that, Nicki. That's great.
That's fine, as long as it gets booked before the 30th of September, and so you've got a month more or less to get those booked in. Also, if anybody wants to, they can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm currently into week 3 of a 25-week program of posts which take you through all of the different aspects that you can look at in your business to help you make sure you get paid on time and that you can keep your cash flow flowing.
Yeah, I do connect with Nicki on LinkedIn, because Nicki does regularly post really, really useful sort of tips and snippets and things on there, but also inputs in terms of just around things that we can all do as that sort of action points within our business. So yeah, give Nicki a follow or connect with Nicki to sort of keep up to date with that, because I think that's probably where, like in terms of like your socials, that's where you're most sort of active, isn't it, Nicki, in terms of those posts and things? Yeah,
definitely. LinkedIn is my stomping ground.
Yeah, excellent. I don't know though, we've obviously got a few people online. If anybody has got any questions, we've obviously got some time if you wanted to drop anything into the sort of chat. I think, Nicki, one thing that's always useful for me, and I know it's one of your, sales only a good sale when you get paid, wasn't it? Is that what you told me?
Yeah, a sale is only a sale until it's paid. It's not a sale until it's paid for.
Yeah. So again, this sort of step in terms of putting processes and things in place to be able to do that is obviously really, really important. Mm-hmm. Again, I think there's some things that we can take from this in terms of you say like client profiling and risk and all those sorts of bits as well, in terms of scorecards. I refer to it as a scorecard. So what metrics might you measure, and they're not just about numbers. You want a client to meet those characteristics of.
Yeah.
What do you do if they start to fail on one? And how do you then review that in terms of then what that means around, say, the other points that then get raised around that as well? So I think that's important as well in terms of sort of seeing that and managing that and understanding that as well. And how it impacts in the wider thing, because of, again, cash flow is really important. Nicki's obviously mentioned about bounce back loans. You've got the cost of living stuff that is obviously going to put pressure on people in terms of what they need to earn out of their business, because those bills aren't going down anytime soon by the looks of it. And then you've also got things around stuff that you might be looking to invest in your business. We talked about rainy day fund and storm fund, or whatever you want to refer to it as. But more importantly, there's that investment pot. You're investing back into your business. So we know that obviously we've chatted with clients a lot about things like the super deduction, the extra capital allowances that are available on new asset purchases in limited companies. So again, we've got a timeline on that. That ends 31st of March currently, and unless they extend that or change that again in any sort of upcoming budget. But again, things like that, are you in a position where you can take those opportunities and can benefit from that by having resources and stuff available to you? And again, it all crux from being paid and knowing that's profitable and getting that system working, so that as a business owner, your attention isn't distracted by things that it doesn't need to be. And again, that's sort of my point about right people doing the right jobs and the right process and stuff in place as well, because again, we're all busy and doing stuff and wanting to do things, and how do we best use that time that we've got available to us, really?
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else that you wanted to add, Nicki, and before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I can talk for hours on this subject, but not everybody's as sort of into it as I am. But
I said, Dave, like the offer at the start is, say really appreciate Nicki giving us her time today to do so. Thank you, Nicki, for that. As I said at the start, Nicki, is if there are other topics that come up, if there are bits that we want to know about, then I know Nicki would be on hand to sort of share her expertise and stuff. Obviously, they say do take the opportunity if this is something of interest in terms of Nicki's Power Hour that is available to you. Again, there'll be some really useful, actionable snippets that are relevant to your business. I mean, that's the main thing I can post. When we talk about webinars and we do these things, obviously we're covering quite a broad subject. That's about trying to start to get those actionable points for you, and then what that means and how you can do that, and what that can lead on to in terms of support and stuff that you might need to actually make those things happen. So yeah, I think this now's a good time to wrap up. So again, thank you, Nicki, for your time today. Really appreciate that. Our recording will be going up, so we'll get that up on our YouTube page. And any other topics you want to come up, whether it's with Nicki or others, or stuff that you want from us, then please do feed that back to us, because again, we'll be happy to do more of these sort of conversational type webinars. So enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see you all soon. All right, take care.
Thank you. Bye.
So Nicki, I think that's just back to us now.
It is.